everybody, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Haley. I have been documenting my triplet pregnancy journey here on YouTube. Today I'm actually filming the final trimester, the third trimester of what my pregnancy was like. Just kind of going over what my care looked like and my symptoms and all that good stuff. I've done other videos recapping, you know, the first trimester and the second trimester. I'll link those below, link them above, you know, wherever I can link things, I will put them in there. But yeah, this will be going over the third trimester. If that is something you're interested in, keep watching this video. Let's dive in while I get ready. Okay, so I went ahead and just put on my concealer and powder just to have my base ready to go, because I feel like putting concealer like with my beauty blender on camera, I'm not a beauty vlog girly, so we're just gonna skip that part. I have my notes here, so let's jump in. Using my all-time favorite palette, the Jaclyn Hill palette. If you know, you know. Okay, so the third trimester starts around like 26 weeks. And at that time is when I started going in like almost weekly for my different scans and stuff. So at that time I was doing the twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome scans, or TTTS. That is to make sure that one twin isn't absorbing more nutrients than the other. If you haven't watched my other videos, I had mono-di twins, so they shared a placenta. So that was something that they needed to keep an eye on to make sure that one wasn't taking more than the other. So those tests were like every other week. And then I was also doing growth scans to make sure that they were growing okay. And those were also every other week. So by the time I got them all scheduled, I was going in like every week and a half. I'm gonna keep this in my lap. 26 weeks is also, I totally forgot about this, is when I got 3D scans for the first time. I just assumed it would be too difficult to get a 3D scan with triplets, but you know, depending on the ultrasound tech that I had, they would try, and I really appreciated that. So I'll see if I can like insert a picture. It's hard to take a picture of an ultrasound because the paper that they printed on is really shiny, so trying to get a nice picture without it having a glare on it is kind of hard, but I loved seeing the 3D scans. 28 weeks is when we started to have not great news when we would go to appointments. The baby C, which was one of the twins, their growth dropped below the 10th percentile, and she had been at the 10th percentile for like a month at that point, so it was almost like bound to happen that she would fall below it. It was still kind of disappointing, obviously. So because she fell to the 4th percentile for weight and like her growth, we had to start doing what is called a non-stress test. Every pregnant person has to eventually have a non-stress test. Because I had triplets and I'm high risk and I had intrauterine growth restriction, or IUGR, that's just when, you know, your baby's not growing very well. I had to go in for those every 7 days. Not ideal, again, on top of all my other appointments. The scheduling people there were unbelievably kind. They were the best, and for a while I was the only person with triplets in the office. I think she said when I was near the end that there was another triplet mom there. I wish I could have met her, that would have been so cool. But I was the furthest along, so I kind of got priority with my appointments, which I really appreciated. So she was able to add the non-stress tests to the days that I was already going to be there, and like vice versa. So I didn't have to go in multiple times a week, but I did have to start going in every single week. You know, for the safety of the babies, it just kind of dealt with it, I guess. A non-stress test, for those that don't know, if you've seen pictures of pregnant women with those bands around their bellies and like those circle things kind of like attached. That's a non-stress test. It basically measures the heart rate of the baby. Because I had to have 3 monitors plus a 4th one to measure contractions. I was having Braxton Hicks, and you have contractions like all throughout your 3rd trimester is my understanding. You don't always feel them, but they're happening. Your body's preparing itself for labor. So I had to do that weekly, and I would say that the non-stress test was almost more nerve-wracking than the ultrasounds, because with the non-stress test, basically their heart rate has to increase a certain amount for a certain length of time within 20 to 40 minutes, I think it is. And if their heart doesn't, I would have had to have been admitted to the hospital. Every time I was sitting there, I was just like fingers crossed praying that they would all pass. And there was only one time that we cut it real close, but they ended up passing, so I never had to be admitted, obviously. It was very stressful, but at that point, that's when the nurses were like, you should have your hospital bag like packed and ready to go in your car, just in case. I didn't end up packing it, as you guys know if you've watched my packing my hospital bag video. I didn't end up packing the bag for like weeks after she told me that. I think I was kind of in denial, but that's when it became very real. It's hard to talk and do my makeup at the same time. I feel like I either get super focused on the makeup or I get super focused on talking. And as you guys know, I am the chattiest person ever, but doesn't seem to bother you guys so far. Let's see. Oh, at 31 weeks is when we got to have a video call with one of the doctors in the NICU, and she just told us what it was going to be like to have our kids there, and we got to ask tons of questions, and that was the most reassuring feeling ever, to be able to talk to her. She was great, super knowledgeable. Obviously, there's something about people that work in the NICU that are just the most amazing people ever. They're so passionate. I would say most medical doctors are passionate about what they do, but there's something about people that work with pregnant people and babies that it's hard to explain unless you meet them and interact with them, but they're just such great people, and she was so patient with answering all my questions. I like had a notebook with pages full of questions to ask, and she answered all of them, like didn't make me feel like I was silly for asking some of the questions. I think she was very understanding of like, never done this before. You don't typically plan for your baby to go into the NICU, so that was super duper helpful. If you are able to do something like that, or like a hospital tour or something, I highly recommend. It really made me feel better and just feel a lot more secure about, you know, what was going to be happening. So then it was also at this time that baby A then also fell below the 10th percentile. They never actually said that I had intrauterine growth restriction. That's basically what it was. So baby A also dropped, but you know, I was already doing the weekly NST test, so it didn't really change anything, to be honest. But at 32 weeks, they started doing what is called a biophysical test. So again, I was already getting weekly ultrasound, so they just kind of tacked this on. It only added like 5 minutes to each appointment, but a biophysical test or ultrasound is to check that they're practicing their breathing. So babies do practice breathe when they're in the womb. They can breathe in and out amniotic fluid, which is absolutely crazy, but it's just to check that their lungs are working and that they know the process of breathing when they are born. So that was actually really cool to see. You can like see them breathing in and out, like their chest rising and falling and their mouth opening, and really cool. So we started doing that weekly at appointments too. And then, yeah, I basically just did that up until I gave birth. Oh, I did have to get, so near the end, I did have to get 2 steroid shots. Oh my gosh. Y'all, steroid shots are awful. They're awful. I almost would equate it to like what my spinal tap was at my C-section. Like, maybe that's a little bit dramatic, but it hurt so bad. You have to get them in your butt, at least I did, or like your hip, but basically your butt. And oh my gosh, they hurt. But the reason that I had to get them was the steroid is supposed to just give the baby's lungs that extra boost, because baby's lungs are the last thing to develop in the womb, I learned. And because I was giving birth at 36 weeks, they were, you know, behind. They didn't have, or I shouldn't say that they were behind. They didn't have as long of an opportunity to grow their lungs. So the steroid shots was supposed to give them a boost. So I had to get 2 of those. And again, they hurt. Oh my gosh. They like go into your muscle and you can just feel, oh, did not like it. That was probably one of the worst things I had to do in my pregnancy, was get those steroid shots. Not gonna lie. Oh, another thing that I had to do, so when I went in for my second, oh, see, now I set my makeup stuff down and now I'm just blabbering away. Let's get back into doing my makeup before I finish this video with only half my face on. Let's see. Anyway, one thing that I had to do, so after I did my second glucose test, oh my gosh, way too much. There we go. So I went in for my second glucose test and I ended up passing it, whatever. But in the blood work, they saw that my iron was really low. I've probably had low iron my whole life, if we're being honest, but you know, obviously in pregnancy, that's really important. So my nurse practitioner actually wanted me to do iron transfusions. I've never done anything like that before. I was so nervous. I had to go to their transfusion center place. It was just another thing I had to do. My nurse practitioner wanted me to have 5 of them done. I ended up only having 3, but it was better than not having any at all. I think I mentioned this in my birth story video, but I actually was getting ready to go to an iron transfusion appointment when my water broke. So I could have had 4 if the girls had waited even just a day. But what can you do? They decided their own birthday. That was basically all the care that I got during the 3rd trimester. Now I'll go over the symptoms that I had during the 3rd tri. So a big one that I had was congestion, and I don't know if I had it in the 2nd trimester. I'd have to look back at like my notes that I took all through my pregnancy, but oh my gosh, it was kind of a mix of pregnancy congestion and allergies, because we were going into fall time in Kansas City and I have really bad seasonal allergies. And I always used to joke with my friends that lived down there, when we would visit them, I would get really bad allergies and I was like, I'm allergic to Missouri. I just had like awful congestion. So I started with saline, like taking saline spray, using saline spray. And that only kind of helped. I had to start using Flonase before I would go to bed at night, because that was fun. That was like a weird one. When I Googled it, I was like, maybe I just have a cold, but turns out congestion's a common pregnancy symptom. So that was kind of weird. Another one that was common, you know, to be expected. I had a lot of swelling in my legs. I had to start wearing compression socks. At first, it was like just my lower legs, like below my knees. So I was wearing compression socks and that helped a ton. But then my thighs started swelling and, you know, I couldn't buy, I guess I didn't really look, but I assumed that you couldn't buy compression socks that went like all the way up to your hips. If I had known that that was an option, I totally would have done that. But yeah, my thighs swelled so bad and like walking anywhere hurt. Super uncomfortable. Got to a point where like the compression socks weren't really doing anything, which was a little disappointing. My shoes didn't fit. The only shoes that I could wear were my Crocs. And even then they were getting tight. So I wore my Crocs everywhere. Sleeping also sucked. Sleeping was really difficult. My hips hurt, my back hurt, my legs were so swollen, they hurt. There wasn't really anything I could do about it either. I bought a different type of pregnancy pillow, which at first I really liked, but I just got to a point where my belly was so big. like no pillow was really gonna help. I would get into bed every night and just be really frustrated and really sad because I knew that I wasn't going to get a restful sleep. And I'm sure people with insomnia might understand this. There's just something so demoralizing about going to bed every night and knowing you aren't gonna sleep well. It's kind of like, what's the point? I know that I'm gonna wake up feeling awful. Like, this sucks. And sleep is supposed to be rejuvenating and, you know, you're supposed to feel better when you wake up, and I never did. I just would feel just as tired as I did when I went to bed. There was a couple nights I shed a few tears and Dan would have to remind me, like, this isn't forever. You can do this. You only have a few weeks left. Like, just power through. It's not forever. And that was super reassuring, and I really appreciated him being really supportive of me during that time because, yikes, it was rough. My biggest symptom that was so awful, rib pain. So when I was pregnant, I had my entire stomach where these babies could sit, but baby B preferred to be as high in my ribs as she possibly could be. I was convinced at one point that my rib was fractured. That's how bad it hurt. It felt like right here, these bottom ribs were on fire just all the time. At first it started on just the right side, and then maybe the last couple weeks it was also on the left, and breathing, sitting, walking, anything, there was like no way that I really got any relief. I ended up making my own rice socks. I don't know if people are familiar with those heating pads that are just filled with rice or corn. I ended up making my own with an old pair of socks so that I could have a heat pack and an ice pack, and I would just cycle back and forth between them. That was the only way that I would feel at least a little bit better. So in my third trimester, even though I knew that it was going to be shorter than the average third trimester, since I couldn't go past 36 weeks, it was still rough. It was really hard. I would say, you know, I had the nausea and stuff in the first trimester, and that was awful in a different way because I just didn't feel like doing anything. I would have just preferred to lay in bed all day. But, you know, I got through each day. I was still working. I wasn't having to go to the hospital all the time. I could still, you know, go for walks outside. The third trimester, though, was hard, not only physically, but mentally. It was mentally really hard. Just not being able to do anything. You know, Dan and I would try and go to the grocery store, and it was like, you maybe get 30 minutes of walking out of me. Like, he had to start doing a lot of things without me, which was disappointing. We would still go to my friend's house, and that was the only place that I would go, is to go visit my friends. And they were super great too. You know, they had just had a baby, so my best friend, you know, she had been pregnant, so she was super understanding and just supportive. So we would just go over there and hang out at their house and just like sit on their couch because that was about as much as I could do. And that was just what my heart needed because, like I said, it was so hard mentally. The only reassurance that I had was it wasn't forever. I just had to keep reminding myself that at the very latest, by December 16th, I would have given birth and I wouldn't have to be pregnant anymore. And people always say, or pregnant people, I should say, people who have been pregnant and given birth, you know, they say that you know, after you give birth, you almost forget like how bad it was. I can like believe that to a certain extent. Like, it is kind of weird. It's almost like your evolutionary monkey brain like convinces you that you can be pregnant again, but when I really think about it, I'm like, no, I don't think I could ever do it again. Like, personally, it was just really rough, but I did it. that's really like the craziest thing about it, is just like, wow, I survived. I did it, I survived. I don't ever have to do it again, probably. I have absolutely no plans to ever be pregnant again. The one time was good enough for me. Okay, so that is my makeup pretty much done. I need to put on like some chapstick or something because it is so cold and blustery outside. It dries out my skin, so let me go put on some chapstick. I'm also going to redo my hair. I don't think this hair really matches this outfit, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so we are all put together. Thank you so much for watching this video today. It's kind of chatty, get ready with me. It was kind of fun, kind of hard. I don't know how the makeup beauty gurus do it, but I have a newfound respect for them because that was kind of hard. But that is it for pregnancy content. That's so wild to think about. That's how I started my channel, restarted my channel, was just talking about being pregnant, and now I'm no longer pregnant. It's time for, you know, this next phase of my life and phase of my content, and it's a little bittersweet. It feels so good to take a little time for just myself. My babies are napping, my husband and my parents are with my babies, and most of my attention goes to them, obviously, so it's nice to put a little bit of that attention into myself, and just do my hair and my makeup a little bit. Am I still wearing pajama pants? Yes, but baby steps. We're gonna work our way up to totally getting back into it, but you know, for now, the top half, I'd say that's pretty darn good. So if you haven't already, go watch my birth story. That's probably going to be the longest video I've ever made because, again, I do not know how to stop talking, how to slow myself down, how to condense. And my birth story is obviously like the craziest thing I've ever been through in my life, so I want to be able to document all of it. But yeah, go ahead and watch that. I will link it below, link it above, link it wherever, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.